in the news today, Martha? Anything big going on?
Well, I haven't read the whole thing yet. You know how long it takes me to wade through this, Maynard.
Look, all you need to do is read the headlines. Read the headlines. What does it say about the new Soviet republics? How many of them are there anyway?
In Russia?
In Russia. In Russia.
Okay, well, let me read this whole thing, then I can tell you.
No, don't read the whole thing. Look, just look for the number that I asked you about. How many republics are there? Just look for the facts.
I have to read the whole thing, Maynard, to find that.
Oh, brother, I don't have time for that. I'm gonna be late. You finished the article?
Uh-huh. On Russia.
So how many are there?
How many what?
Don't you remember anything? How many republics are there?
I can't remember that, Maynard. Let me go back and read it again, and then I can tell you.
What do you remember?
It's about Russia. Read about Russia and all the countries.
Oh, boy. Okay.
But I can find it. Just wait, Maynard. I'll find it.
No. I'll catch you on the radio. I'm late for work. See you later.
Okay, bye.
Martha and Maynard could benefit from some strategy instruction in the area of reading. They seem to be unclear on the concepts of skimming, comprehending, and scanning reading material for the important information.
Turn to page 1 in the participant packet that accompanies this training video. Reading is generally defined as the processing of written language. In about the 4th grade, reading instruction shifts from a focus of teaching basic tool skills to teaching reading in the content areas. Along this line, students' use of learning strategies can greatly facilitate efficient reading in the content areas. In fact, the major emphasis in the intermediate grades should move from learning to read to reading to learn. Notice the definition of learning strategies included on this page.
The information contained in this video presentation will focus on 3 levels of strategic reading behavior for success in the content areas: skimming, comprehension, and scanning. Specific strategies will be discussed for each of these levels. The objectives for this presentation are listed for you on the bottom of page 1. 1. You will be able to describe 3 levels of strategy instruction in the area of reading. 2. You will be able to teach students a specific strategy for one of the levels.
Definitions of each level are included on page 2. Skimming strategies are required when the objective is to preview, survey, or gain an overview of the text. The key concept strategy will be presented as one alternative for facilitating skimming. Comprehension strategies are required when the objective is to comprehend all of the ideas presented by the author. 2 different comprehension strategies will be presented: SQ3R and Students Ask Questions.
Scanning strategies are required when the objective is to answer questions posed by or for the reader. One example of a scanning for information strategy titled Sir, I Serve will be presented. Numerous reading strategies have been developed and validated. Refer to Appendix A for references and additional information on a variety of specific reading strategies. Stop the tape to locate this information.
There are many important reasons for teaching reading strategies to students. Refer to page 3 in your packet where some benefits of strategy instruction are listed. Starting in the intermediate grades, students are required to read materials that differ more widely in difficulty and content. The need to retain information from what is read requires more flexibility. Students are expected to read for different purposes, to recall only certain aspects of the narrative, and be flexible in their reading speed depending upon what is to be drawn from the text. Unfortunately, little training is provided for these purposes.
When teaching learning strategies to students, the use of proper instructional procedures will require time for preparation, training of students, and careful monitoring of student performance. Some general steps for teaching strategies to students are listed on page 4. Some important cautions are also noted. Stop the tape and review this information. Turn to page 5 in your packet. The first strategy level of reading behavior involves the use of skimming. Remember, skimming is used when it is necessary to preview, survey, or gain an overview of the written material. The steps in a key concept strategy used for skimming are described. Stop the tape and read the information on page 5. Now watch this teacher use the key concept strategy.
Eyes are up here ready to go. Notice up here on the board, what word do I have? Get ready to say it. What word? Skim. Say it again. Skim. Yesterday I taught you a strategy called skim. The strategy has 4 steps. Look at the first bubble here on the board today. In the bubble it says, what will you be able to do? What will you be able to do today? At the end of today's lesson, you will be able to use the skim strategy. You're going to use it. You're going to practice using it with some of our reading material. All right, so what will you be able to do? Raise your hand if you know. Shalene.
You'll be able to use it when you're reading.
You'll be able to use it when you're reading. The key word is use. You'll be able to use the skim strategy. What's the key word? Use. Nice job. Look at bubble number 2. Why? Why would we want to be able to use the skim strategy? Yesterday when I introduced you to this strategy, I gave you a few reasons on why you would want to know how to use this strategy. If you have an idea, raise your hand on why. Courtney.
So you know what's important.
So you know what's important. Excellent. That was excellent. Okay, Tim.
Help you find the information faster.
Help you find the information faster. Excellent. Wow, you guys are coming up with great whys, great reasons for using the skim strategy. I want you to look at bubble number 3, how. We're going to review the steps in the skim strategy. Then I'm going to give you a chapter and we will practice each of these steps. Okay, everybody has been given a highlighter pen. And chapter 3, and we're going to use the skim strategy. The first step is to survey and check through the material. I want everybody to do that now. Survey it, flip through it. See how many pages are there. Don't mark, we're not on M yet. Survey, just flip through it. See how many pages. See if there are any charts or graphs. See if there are, see how long it is. Okay. It's enough time to survey, just flip through it. Next step, keep in mind. Remember our key questions that we're going to keep in mind, or our key things that we're looking for. Go ahead and look and see if your chapter, don't mark, just look and see if your chapter has any of those things. Does it have a heading? Does it have a title? Does it have a chart? Does it have a picture, a graph? Words on the pictures or graphs that are important. Symbols in the margin. Does your chapter have any of those things? Yeah, all right. Okay. Now I want you to identify, and we can do these 2 steps together. Identify and then mark. So find the important information and mark it. The first one I want you to find with your finger is the title. Put your finger on the title. You got it. Put your finger on the title. You've got it. Highlight it now. Highlight it with your marker. Highlight the entire title. 2 lines. How do Americans live together? Make sure you've highlighted the entire title. Nice job. Put your finger on the first paragraph. We're not going to read it. We're just looking for some of the key concepts and ideas that might jump out at us. In the first paragraph, do you see any bold-faced words? Yes or no? Yes or no? No. Do you see any italicized words? Yes or no? No. Okay. Do you see any underlined words? No. Do you see a subheading in the first paragraph? Be careful. Do you see a subheading that starts out that paragraph? No. Are we going to highlight anything? No. Nice job. Okay, I see something that jumps out that's a subheading. Put your finger on it. It comes next. You've got it? Got it. Highlight it. That's a subheading. Highlight it. That subheading says, Our Nation's Leaders. We're going to hear something about our nation's leaders. Are we going to read? No. We're going to skim. Skim the next paragraph and see if there's anything you want to identify and mark. Laura has her finger on something. Mike has his finger on something that they want to highlight. Trudy has her finger on something that she thinks is a key concept. Okay, most people have their finger on the bullet of, just highlight the bullet, because that must mean that's something we better read.
Now complete the practice activity on page 6 with a partner. Preview the selection and then mark the key ideas. Check your responses with another group. Discuss why you marked certain key concepts. Finally, list at least 3 specific situations where it would be important for students to use a key concept strategy. Refer to page 7 as we discuss the next strategy level of reading behavior, comprehension. Remember, comprehension strategies are used when it is necessary to understand all of the ideas presented by the author. 2 specific comprehension strategies will be discussed.
First, can you think about some specific reading situations that would require the student to use a comprehension strategy? Stop the tape and list your ideas on the bottom of page 7. Share your ideas with the group or check your responses with those ideas listed at the bottom of the page.
Turn to page 8. The SQ3R reading strategy is described along with an explanation of the 5 steps in the process. Stop the tape and read this information. Now look at pages 9 and 10. Here you will find an SQ3R worksheet which can assist students in using the strategy. Stop the tape and take a few minutes to review the worksheet.
Watch this teacher using the SQ3R strategy. Notice each of the steps being modeled in the process.
Okay. So far you have surveyed it. What did you do during the survey step, Lonnie?
You wrote down the main headings.
Wrote down the main headings. Now in step 2, you're going to turn those into questions. So on number 1 here, what did you have, Chad, under survey number 1?
The formation of a volcano.
Okay, the formation of a volcano. And so down here on step 2, question number 1, you just turn that into a question. Who remembers we've got survey, question, and we have an R. What's the R stand for? Jory? Read. Go ahead and read this passage so that we'll be able to answer those questions. And now the thing is we're going to recite, and we'll do this out loud. We won't necessarily write these down, although if you were doing this, when you do it on your own later on, I'm going to have you actually write those out. So, looking at your questions, let's see, we'll take a question, Jory,
What is lava?
what is lava? Okay, can you answer that from what you just read there? Jill,
Magma that reaches the Earth's surface.
all right.
It's called lava.
So it comes up, and when it reaches the Earth's surface, it's lava. After reading this and going through it, the review part would be to check yourself. How many of you could answer that without looking back at the text? Okay, if you could, that's good, and you just think to yourself how you could do that. If you couldn't, what would you do? If you couldn't remember that, what might you do? Jill?
Just look back.
Sure, just look back and then try and remember that. Okay, so that's the review step. Some things to do, you could actually use this paper. You've got it all written out there, and you could use it to do that. And that would be helpful when it comes time to study for a test.
Now complete a practice activity using another copy of the worksheet found on pages 11 and 12. Complete the worksheet using the information contained in the article on page 13. This activity can be done with a partner. Stop the tape and complete this exercise. The next comprehension strategy to be presented is called Students Ask Questions. After reading a passage either silently or orally, students are expected to compose questions about the story across a variety of areas or categories. This strategy is also useful for improving general language skills, including the ability to ask questions.
Watch this teacher using the strategy in the classroom. Each of the elements will be highlighted. After reading a story, students would be expected to compose questions using a worksheet such as the one found on page 14.
Okay, let's go through each of these steps. You all have your question organizer in front of you. That's the O, organize. I see Janae's. Great, everybody's ready there. Now, you also have an article that I'd like you to pull out right now called Alone in the Australian Outback. Alone in the Australian Outback. This is a story about a young woman who takes a trip through the Australian outback by herself. She has a few companions, but they're not human companions. So what I would like you to do at this point is read the story to yourselves. Please read the story to yourselves. You might want to put a little dot or a mark next to something that you think is going to be important about the story, so that when it comes to the next step, asking questions, you'll know what kinds of questions you want to ask. I'll give you 15 minutes to read this story. Would you please begin? You have 5 types of questions you're going to be asking. Let me briefly review them. We've talked about them already. The first one is questions about the setting. You may ask questions about the characters, the time, the location. All of those things would go in that box. Any question you have about that. The next box relates to questions that are what happens at the beginning of the story? What kinds of events take place? Then you will ask reaction questions about the story, about how the character felt, about what's happening, what the goal of the main character is, what does she expect to accomplish. The fourth box talks about questions that are attempts. What's the plan? How does she carry out the plan? The things that occur in the middle of the story. And then finally the outcome questions. What happened as a result? What was the ending of the story? So I want you at this time to take 1 minute, and I'll tell you to begin, and I want you to write as many questions as you can in each of those boxes. And please try to get to every box. So you might want to write 1 in the first box and then go to the next one and then come back up to the top again. Are there any questions? Okay. Remember, you're writing questions about the story related to each of those topic areas. Okay, 1 minute. Be sure your questions will be understandable to another person because I'm going to ask you to share some of those. Ready? Begin. Okay, pencils down. I want you to count up the number of questions that you wrote and write that number on the top right-hand corner of your paper. Or left hand if you already put it there. How many did you get? Nice job. Okay, that was the record part of this strategy. And when we do this strategy again tomorrow, I'm going to have you do the same thing. And what I want you to be able to do is come up with one more question than you did today. So make sure you remember how many questions you wrote today. Now, we need to see if these are understandable questions and are they really comprehension questions. So what I would like you to do in order to complete the next step, improve, is to, bless you, turn to the person next to you and ask them some of the questions that you wrote and see if they can answer them. If not, then you need to improve on your question. So go ahead and do that right now. Michael and Janae, okay, ask each other some questions that you wrote down and see if your partner can answer them. One thing you would need to do to improve is to make sure, oh, you've got who is it about. Okay, you've got it here. That's good. You've got to make sure you're asking the question. Okay, if they don't make sense, be sure you improve on them by changing them. They have to be in question form.
This strategy is further explained on page 15 of your packet. Stop the tape and read this information.
Now practice this strategy by completing the activity found on page 16. First, read the story, and then write questions in the category areas which have been listed. Stop the tape and complete this activity.
The last strategy level of reading behavior is called scanning. Scanning strategies are used when the objective is to answer questions posed by or for the reader. A specific scanning strategy called Sir I Serve will be described. This strategy can be used with student or teacher-generated questions, questions found on worksheets, or at the end of chapters or books. Refer to page 17 for a description of each of the steps in this strategy. Notice that a student bookmark has been included on page 18. This can be used to prompt students in the steps of the process as well as serve as a self-monitoring technique. Stop the tape and read this information. Now watch this teacher actively instruct students in the scanning strategy. Use page 19 as you view this teaching demonstration to make notes. Also try counting the number of verbal student responses which are elicited during the teacher-directed portion of the lesson.
Now that you all know what the scanning for information strategy is used for, and you know when to use it appropriately, let's take a look at the steps in the scanning for information strategy. You'll need a piece of paper on your desk so you can write down each of the steps as we go through them. I want to look for titles, I want to look for headings, and I want to look for standout words. Okay, so let's just kind of look through the chapter that I've given you and see where we see some titles and perhaps some headings. So right now you survey your chapter. Well, let's see, on the first page I can see the title. Everybody put your finger on the title so I know that you can locate the title. Good. Okay, we've got it. Super. And what is the title of this chapter, everybody? Material of the Earth's crust. Great. Material of the Earth's crust. Well, let's see if we can, let's keep going through the pages and see if there are any titles to sections of this chapter. I don't see any titles or subheadings anywhere on these pages. So let's go back to the beginning of that chapter again on page 153 and look for some of those standout words. Now, standout words are pretty obvious because they might be italicized, perhaps bold-faced, or they might be capitalized. Well, on the first page, I can see 3 standout words. Survey that first page, and when you have found those 3 standout words, would you raise your hand? Great, okay. Who can tell me what one of those standout words is? Shelley?
Minerals?
Minerals is one. And why is it a standout word? Shelley?
Because the writing's different.
Okay, the writing's different. That's called italicized. That word's italicized. Okay, who can find the second standout word? Tessa?
Rocks.
Rocks. And it is also italicized, correct? All right, and the third one is?
Silicates.
Silicates. Okay, so we have 3 standout words on that page. Look on your worksheet, and we are going to answer question number 5. Question number 5. This time, I'm going to have you go through the steps, and I want you to have your bookmark out. On the front of the bookmark, you have everyone's eyes up here, so I know you're looking and hearing the right, looking at and hearing the right information. On the front of the bookmark, you have the steps, and you have what you're looking or surveying when you look at the written material. Those 3 things are there, and gives you a little bit more information. On the back of the bookmark, if you turn it over, you have Sir, I serve off to the left there, and you have some little squares. And the purpose of those squares is as you go through, you can check off the boxes after you complete each step. Okay, and that's an option. If you need to do that, you can just check so you don't forget any of the steps in the strategy. So use this bookmark as you answer the questions on the question of number 5 on your worksheet.
Now use the scanning strategy to answer the questions related to the passage on page 20. Stop the tape and complete this activity.
Check your understanding of the basic information related to reading strategies by completing the study guide on page 21. A complete teaching demonstration on this scanning strategy is available on a 40-minute videotape. Additional information on this video, as well as other training tapes in this series, can be found in Appendix B.
Refer to page 22 in your packet for a sample lesson plan format developing the lesson on scanning for information. This format can also be used when developing lessons for other reading strategies.
Now that Martha and Maynard have some strategic reading skills, they are saving time, understanding the important information, and enjoying reading.
Morning, Martha.
Hi, Maynard.
What's going on in the news? Anything big?
Oh, looks like the president is off on another jaunt overseas. Looks like Russia is still having big problems over there.
How many republics did they end up with?
Well, it looks like so far 11.